than there are displayed on the screen. And no harm in waving your hand at me, but I may not see you because you may not be on the screen I'm looking at. And especially if you have any kind of background noise, please mute yourself and unmute once I've called on you. It'd be better just if everybody muted to begin with, because some people's setups have feedback, and most of you are familiar with Zoom meetings and you know this anyway. All right, so at least in Mount Tabor, it is now 6:33 p.m. And I'll call the meeting to order. And Celeste, do we have any public comment on the line now?
Not that I'm aware yet, but just so you know, we are now live on YouTube and I'm recording the meeting. And I've got a couple people that just joined us. So we've got Jim Salzgiver and I've got another person who I don't know who they
Looks like,
are.
I think Ben just joined us.
Yep, but I got to figure out who this last person is. Bear with me.
You can just ask the person on the phone to identify themselves.
Yeah, who just called in from their phone number?
They look neat. Hello?
Hi, Darren Marcy, Manchester Journal.
Hi, Darren. How are you? Thank you.
Yes, no problem.
Okay. All right, so we don't have,
ARCEY?
yeah, it's spelled on the screen.
I just wrote it in there, Herb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we don't have any public then who want to comment at this point. Is that right?
If they did, they would be calling in.
Okay. So I'll review the norms. As a board, we will make sure all our students are our first priority. We will honor the distinction between governance and administrative responsibilities. We will set ends policies, board management delegation policies, and governance policies and measure our performance against these policies. We will set goals for our work that are SMART, namely specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-bound, and we will periodically check in on these goals. We will conduct ourselves in a courteous and professional manner. This means we will respect time, follow protocol, speak to the point, be prepared, bring closure to open items. We will make fact-based decisions that are in the best interests of our stakeholders. We will clearly and effectively communicate with all stakeholders. And again, if you want to be recognized, please use the chat function. Okay to wave your hand also, but I can't see everybody on my screen, so the chat is a good way to make sure that I know that you want to be called on. And the next item is the consent agenda. And as usual, unless somebody moves to discuss it, all we need is a motion to pass it. And I see Dick. Dick, do you want to unmute yourself so I can hear what you're saying? Or I'll unmute you if you want.
Well, I did, but
Okay.
I move it.
Okay. So Dick has moved the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second, this is Ben.
That was Ben. All right. Moved and seconded. Celeste, if you don't catch this, just have me repeat it. Okay. All those in favor. Let me see here. I think we're going to do, let's do this with hands, because as soon as I can count more than half of you, I know it passed. All in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that passes.
But doesn't it have to be unanimous in order to move on?
I don't think
Otherwise,
so.
we need a roll call vote.
Oh, that's right. I almost forgot that. Yep. Yep. Because we're doing this remotely, we have to do everything by roll call, don't we? Wait a minute here.
Only if it's not unanimous.
Well,
It's hard to tell what's unanimous
Yeah,
right
it's hard
now.
to tell it's unanimous when you can't see everybody on the same screen here.
You could ask if there are any nays or abstentions.
That's a good idea. Is that okay with everybody? If you don't speak up when I ask for nays or abstentions, I'm going to assume it was a yes vote. So if you have a nay vote or an abstention, please unmute yourself and say so. Good idea. Okay, I don't hear any, so that passes unanimously. And Celeste can record that all the people who are here voted in favor of it. So into item 5, which is financial
Herb?
planning. Pardon?
There's one other subtlety that was practiced at the select board meetings, and that was that each of the board members had to actually identify themselves as present. I don't know whether that's required now, but
I
it
don't
was
think
part of
it's
the.
required because, correct me if I'm wrong, Celeste, but you can tell which board members are present for the Zoom meeting, right?
That's correct. Everybody, I've identified everybody on the screen.
Yeah. So I don't think that will be necessary being conducted this way. And again, just a reminder, please, if you want to speak, either wave until I call on you or use the chat. Otherwise, please do not speak, okay? Because otherwise we're going to have people at the same time. It's going to get confusing. So financial planning, attrition and reduction in force decisions, and financial planning and budgeting. And I would assume that either Jackie or Sue is going to be talking to this.
So I'll talk to the attrition and reduction in force first. Okay. So we have been, in light of what we know to be some significant financial challenges that we'll be facing in FY21, we took a very close look at some recent resignations and retirements that we have had originally budgeted for in the FY21 budget. And Randy and Sue and I took a look at class sizes and measured up what our numbers look like according to the attrition plan that this board approved 2 years ago. And I'll remind you that at that attrition plan, we were seeking to right-size our classrooms, and we were looking for classrooms at the elementary level. By that, I mean K-3 that were between 15 and 18 students, and looking at classrooms in grades 4 through 8 of between 18 and 24 students. So that's all in my recommendation I made to you. So we have decided that we are not at this point going to fill 3 positions that have become vacant as a result of retirement. And that will result in an approximately a total savings of $244,000 to the FY21 budget. And it will mean, however, that in all likelihood, we may be reassigning teachers in a school that has low enrollment to a school that has a need for that position. So a teacher may be reassigned from one school to another. When we do that, we'll first seek volunteers, and if we're not able to solve that issue through volunteers, then I'll make a reassignment of that person to a new school. I tell you all this, it's also important to remember that we're dealing in a very uncertain context. We do not know what the future holds. We do not know if within the next month or 2 months, we will get direction from the agency that limits what a class size can be for health and safety reasons. So we have to be very nimble and flexible and able to respond if that were the case. So right now, with what we know, I am telling you that what our enrollment looks like right now, we feel that this is a prudent move to make, and that we can make these and not hire and fill these positions, and it will not jeopardize the educational experience for our kids. But we're in a very uncertain context, so we will watch that and we will see what direction we get, and we may have to react differently if things should change. But right now, given what we know today, this is what we're recommending. And we also don't know. I mean, I think we do know, and Secretary French has said loud and clear that school will not be normal school when it starts up in the fall. It will not be business as usual. So we will still be in a place where we're dealing with safety and health for students and having to make sure that we're attending to whatever recommendations are put out by the agency and the Department of Health. So, so who knows? We'll probably have some type of, probably be some type of hybrid of a school experience. And we don't know what that means for our enrollment numbers. Will some parents opt for their children to participate in distance learning over a face-to-face experience? We just don't know. So we're just, but right now, this is what we believe is the responsible thing to do and moving forward. Dick?
Dick.
I assume just because of the transition that you and Randy have both agreed on this as the policy going forward.
Yes, Randy and I are working on everything together. I'm not working in isolation in either issue. So we're communicating on all these issues. We also have decided to eliminate 4 budgeted paraprofessional positions. That will result in a savings of about $170,000. However, just know that that savings will be offset a bit because you know, special ed reimbursement. And 2 of those positions required a 3 of those positions. I was wrong in my recommendation. It ended up with 3. We've had 3 reduction in force notices that we have given to staff, and I've already spoken to those staff members to let them know that. So those 2 things are in place.
Lindsay, in the chat a while ago, you had your hand up. Was there something you wanted to say?
No, from when we were saying the ayes, I didn't realize I had to put it down, so I put it down.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Jackie at this point? Okay.
Ben does. Ben.
Yeah, I just was curious, Jackie, I know Dan French is speaking with the Senate Ed Committee on Thursday. This coming Thursday is scheduled to come and talk about what school will look like in the future. And I don't know if you've just gotten any, if you've gotten any inside superintendents are hearing anything ahead of that, or if that's just another pro forma.
Yeah, we don't know. We haven't been given, and I frequently, I mean, I'm a trustee for the Superintendent's Association, so probably chat with Dan every week. We do in some capacity, and no, we do not have any inclination of that yet. And however, Randy was asked to be part of the statewide task force. That is really a design team that's going to be looking at what do we do around education for the future in Vermont. So you'll have somebody right on the ground that will be working on that.
Thank you. Have I missed anybody that wanted to comment or question? If I have, please put yourself on the chat so I can see, because not everybody fits on one screen. Okay, and somebody's put on the chat, excuse me, Mr. Ogden, there are many people are trying to get in. Some are in the waiting room. Celeste, is there anything we can do about that?
I'm adding people as they come into the waiting room.
Okay. And for those that have come in out of the waiting room, we already had one public comment time. We will have another one later on. During most meetings, I've been able to allow comments from the public while we are addressing an item, but that does not seem very practical for a Zoom meeting. So if you're public as opposed to a board member, and you do have a comment or a question, please save it until close to the end when we'll have another public comment time, please.
Herb,
Yeah.
could we offer that if people had questions, they wanted to add it to the chat, that at the end of the meeting, we can go through that chat function?
I think that's an excellent idea. Okay, so the other part of item 5 is the financial planning and budgeting. And everybody, the board at least has a copy of the financial status. Who wants to speak to that?
Sue, do you want to speak to that? You're the one who put that work together.
Sure. So we are projecting that we're going to be in a better position at the end of this year than we showed you in January. And in the packet, I've listed out the material variances that we're seeing in revenues and expenditures. You know, one of the big changes we're seeing is in the food service program. Obviously, we're feeding a lot more kids, so you're going to see the expenses go up. But we're also able to pull in revenue for that, and it's a different type of revenue. So we're receiving a little bit of a higher revenue rate. So we are expecting to offset those higher food costs with added revenues. Of course, this is all just a projection. People who are taking food service delivery could drop off. We could have more come on. So we're doing our best to project out based on what we've spent so far and what we've taken in so far. So we do expect to be in a better position, which is great going into next year. But of course, the bigger issue is next year and the years beyond, and what the ed fund is going to look like and what that's going to do to our tax rates. And we don't have the answers to that at this point. So for now, what we've included in here is, while this is a better picture than what we were looking at in January, there are some added expenses in here that we either have already spent or expect to spend throughout the end of the year to buy more things like supplies for kids at home and technology and things that we need to support them while they're doing their distance learning. Then going into next year, we expect to have to spend money on that as well, and to spend money on having supplies on hand for staff for safety measures. And we don't know what that's going to look like either. So next year is really a big unknown. So going into next year, I think with a little bit more of a surplus puts us in a better position. So does anybody have any questions about the list of variances and changes that we've spelled out?
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
Are there any questions on the list of changes to revenues and expenditures?
Okay. I'm looking for hands. I don't see any on the screen. I don't see any in the chat. If I've missed you, please put in the chat that you want to be recognized. Okay. All right. The next thing would be incidental.
Dick has his hand up.
Who?
Dick has his hand up.
Okay. Dick.
Have we resolved the issue of equalized education cost sharing yet? Obviously, the state is going through all sorts of stuff, and I would guess that we have not.
Go ahead, Sue.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you talking about the yield, whether or not the yield has been set?
Yes.
Has not. And I asked that question earlier this week, and they're not even sure that it's going to be set by June 1st. So I'm not sure what that means for setting tax rates at the town. A little concerned about that, but we have to wait for the legislature to do their thing. So they're working on it.
And I'm sure, I just want to add, I'm sure that you've all been following through the SBA and through the Agency of Education and the news that you know, the projected deficit is, you know, of the ed fund is about 152 million right now. So that's why, as a leadership team, we're doing everything we can to tighten our belts and be as responsive as we can at this point.
Okay, anybody else have a comment or a question? Again, wave, I may be able to see you on the screen, otherwise use the chat. Let's see. Oh yeah, Melanie.
So because this is so in flux, I'm wondering if we are going to be required to set to our regular calendar. Do we have that flexibility, Jackie, if you need to call on us a couple of times this summer extra, being that we don't, you know, this is all so fluid at this point. And I don't want to be beholden to a calendar with July off when we might need that time.
I think you're all going to have to be flexible. We're all going to have to be flexible all the time.
Okay.
You can't call me. I won't go to show up in July, but, but I know someone who will.
Anybody else have a comment or a question? Okay. Can we go on to part 6 of the agenda, which is incidental information? And again, it's all about COVID-19. Well, not quite all about COVID-19. But first we have a food service item.
Yep. So I asked, just so the board knows, you know, those of us in the trenches right now, the principals and central office staff, we have a pretty good sense of how what's come down from the agency and the directives that we've received in our response to COVID. We have a good sense of how that's playing out in the schools, but we know that you as board members probably don't. Many of you, especially if you don't have children in the system. So I've asked a few guests here today to kind of talk to you a little bit about their work. They'll all speak to you for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and you can ask them questions if you have them. But you know, we've got food service, Skylar on teaching and learning, and Bjorn has done a lot of work around technology. Carolyn's going to speak to you about what it's like to implement this in a school-based level. And I think many of our other principals are here too. So you may have some questions for them. They're here to respond to that. And Randy's going to talk to you a little bit about special ed. So that's our plan. I thought instead of a written report, it would be good for all of you to kind of hear from right from the field what's going on.
Okay, go ahead.
Kelly, are you here? Kelly's not here right now. So why don't we move on to, I know Skylar's here.
Skylar's here, so let's hear from him.
Okay, I guess I can just start at the beginning, and it's been a whirlwind of change in these last 7 weeks or so. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, so I want to take the time, and I would do this any other day as well, to recognize the teachers that are here and all the hard work that they put in really adapting to a situation that is constantly changing and moving. So they've done an excellent job, and I think as an organization, we've responded relatively well to every curveball that is thrown at us, and those are continuing to be thrown at us, less frequently now. But so essentially, our main concern was accessibility for kids and meeting their social emotional needs prior to thinking about academic learning. We had a little bit of time to do that before introducing quote unquote new learning on the governor's plan. And during that 2-week to 3-week time, I met with just about every group of teachers that we have. So unified arts teachers, all the grade level teachers, special educators, interventionists, other service providers. And we established a couple of different platforms for them to deliver instruction and to interact with families. Some of those, so the 2 that we landed on were Seesaw, usually that's used for grades K to 3 to various extents, and then Google Classroom, of which some teachers were already using. So we kept Google Classroom in place for a lot of people, and other folks wanted to try out Seesaw. Bjorn will speak to you about the process of getting everybody trained. It really was taking like a 3-year plan for training and implementation and cramming it into 3 weeks. And I'm sure all of the faces I'm seeing on the screen that are in the classroom or in the virtual classroom now making things happen can tell you that they grew a lot in a very short amount of time. I think that we've settled into something that will be effective. It might not be as effective as being in person. I know that when the higher education institutions closed down, they were able to switch immediately to synchronous video, where there's a camera in front of you, there's a camera in front of me, and we're just going to do business as usual and lecture. That doesn't quite work that way for our communities. So we had to determine a balance between synchronous and asynchronous experiences for kids, and additionally, a balance between creating all of their content versus curating content that already existed. We navigated the sea of shiny things that came out as a result of COVID-19 school closures. Every software company that offered a subscription, it was now free. So it was difficult not to latch on to things and to try and keep things focused. But at the same time, we did offer quite a bit of flexibility for teachers to generate their own learning experiences, and tried to provide support for them in understanding that it really isn't business as usual. If you think about behavioral management from a classroom perspective, it's difficult to even manage a classroom when you're in the classroom. So now that you have no opportunity to manage behaviors and there's a zillion more distractions when you sit a student down in front of a distance learning portal, it's really challenging. But they've done an excellent job of making that happen. And I know that Bjorn can speak a little bit more to the training that they've done. But I think that we're doing our best to provide equitable experiences, and all of the classrooms that I've had the opportunity to pop into, there's some really great things going on. And a lot of teachers have really impressed me in the amount that they've been able to become fluent with a lot of these tools in such a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and I'll transition right into this one. It's probably some new faces. I'm Bjorn Barrett. I'm the brand new guy on the staff this year, and I've been happy to be on here. Skylar kind of took my favorite quote, saying we took a 3-year plan and implemented it in 3 weeks. But it's been great. I've made some connections throughout the year, which has been great and kind of moving in a direction. And then this hit, and what's happened is actually I've been able to connect with even more teachers on a regular basis. Think about a week after we signed out, school closed, I put together a e-learning website. I know we are teaching distance learning, which is a combination of physical handouts and stuff like that, packets that are going out. I wanted to focus on the actual electronic version. So we created an e-learning site for the teachers to do trainings with that. And it's full of great content. I put together a bunch of jumpstart guides for them to get going with. I complemented that recently with an e-learning for parents site. So it's a site that parents can go look at that's public and more along the lines from the students' focus on things. In addition to being able to do the guides and the screencasts and all the things that they can go to, I started doing trainings called e-trainings twice a day. One at 9, one at 1 o'clock, same training, so they could choose which one they were going to. So I didn't conflict with any meetings or anything else like that. And I've been running those for, I'm looking here. I think my first one was March 23rd. And only within the past couple of weeks have I kind of gone down, so we're not doing it 5 days a week. I'm kind of trying to get it down to 2 to 3 days a week. Now that teachers are pretty much trained, it's some new things. I'm even getting some teachers to join on. I think we had Joanna Davis come on and show how she's using a tool called Jamboard to do some really cool instruction and feedback with her students. Trying to get Goyam in from Dorset to also talk about another tool that she's using with her students very successfully. So we're turning from some trainings to actually success stories. The fourth thing that I've been doing throughout the year, I started doing a monthly newsletter called The Innovator, which is a very simple, great information. I try to make it really easy, kind of scannable type of a tool. Since we went with, we closed, I switched that to a weekly newsletter. So that's been coming out weekly with different information that they have access to and things like that. So the best part is I've been able to connect with a lot of teachers. I have one teacher who says she set an alarm for 9 and 1 or for 1 o'clock every day. So she hits the alarm, then jumps on. She didn't really care what was going on. She jumped on. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from the principals about how they've been mentioned at some of the faculty meetings, the e-trainings. And like I said, some teachers have been following up and they're kind of trickling in now. They're connecting with me one-on-one. So it's been a great time to meet with them. And I'm really excited because a lot of the tools that we're implementing now with Seesaw and Google Classroom, and even some of the screencasting, because is all tools that I was trying to plan to try and implement with teachers when we are physically in the building. Screencastify, which is a screen where you can record the screen, is a great tool. Something called for flip learning. So tools for students to learn. So been really excited about what's going on. Okay.
Before we go on to the next report, did anybody have any questions or comments about either what Skylar said or what Bjorn just said? If you're on my screen and you wave your hand, Dick.
Oh, wait, start video. No, start video. Press the wrong button. My question has to do with, there were pockets, at least early on, where kids didn't have access to the internet. Have we begun to catch up in terms of access to the internet? And my second question has to do with, I have heard through the grapevine a number of parents who believe that they're not capable of teaching their kids from kindergarten on. Have we had much experience with parents who have given up?
So I can speak to and I don't know that I'm the best person to speak to, but as far as closing the equity gap and providing internet access for kids, the last conversation that I was a part of had suggested that we were down to maybe 1% of our students that didn't have an access point. And I know that we are working with those individual families to figure out a solution for that. So at the same time, we're still offering paper-based materials. And I know that there's a lot of question marks around that as far as handling of paper materials and things going back and forth. But that is an option. But I do know that we are doing our best to address the connectivity. And right now it is significantly lower than it was when we started. And as far as parents giving up, so I was a classroom teacher for a while, and I taught multiple grade levels, both primary and intermediate. I never taught kindergarten, and it just so happens that I have a kindergartner at home with me, and now I am teaching kindergarten. And I have always said this, I think it's one of the most difficult jobs in all of education. And it has proven true to me. I certainly reach a point of frustration as well while I'm trying to do my actual job. I have heard from some parents, yes, that is kind of where the parent support site that Bjorn put together originated. I don't know that there is a right way to do this. And I don't know how else we would be able to support people. Very often I think about families with multiple children in our school system. And if those parents are essential employees, or even if those parents are at home right now. In a global pandemic, sometimes education takes a back seat. And one of the messages that I tried to relay to teachers when I was meeting with them at grade level clusters or unified arts was that there will likely be some families who have difficulty engaging, whether it's accessibility or whether it's just from a time management perspective. And we need to be okay with that. And we need to know that going forward, whatever the fall looks like, we're going to be in a better position because we will have had the opportunity to plan for something like this. And we can provide support in a much better way and close any gaps that are opening.
Other comments or questions? Just a reminder, Celeste would like everybody, if you haven't already, rename yourself to include first and last name.
Mel has a question, Herb.
Okay, Melanie?
So I've been hearing from a lot of parents, teachers, in-state, out-of-state in general, you know, with this, and so I guess my point is, you know, I know especially with the younger kids, right, it's very hard for them to get on technology and use these services. And I'm curious if it's possible, and what's occurring to me is there needs to be a lot of outreach to parents. And I'm really happy to hear about a parent portal. You know, my kid's in 6th grade, so we're working this out. However, do the parents have access to the counselors that we have for the students? Is it possible that we can hook them up so that they can also get, you know, I'm not trying to solve all their family problems, right, necessarily, but parents that are trying to teach and work and are not, Skylar, you said you used to teach kindergarten, you get this. Most parents at home weren't ever teachers. So besides a parent portal, are there counseling or support systems that they can reach out to or that we can make available to them so they can get through this?
Yeah, I'll hand that off, I guess, to student services. Randy, do you want to? 'Cause
Sure.
you're probably more aware of that.
So Melanie, yes, and everybody else for sure. That's a huge concern of ours. I was on the phone with a parent today who was in tears, ready to say, I am done with all of this. Many kids, I think between her 4 children, she had like 6 Zoom meetings, speech therapy, one-on-one reading with a teacher, and it's just too much. And so, after she settled a little bit, it was, so let's talk about how do we, let's create maybe it's a learning time. This is school in my house, and really talking to teachers about what they need. So I think you're spot on. It's incredibly difficult. And our guidance counselors, I know we've got at least one on this call, are doing a tremendous amount of work to support our families and students. So there are networks set up in schools to connect people. Counselors are connecting with students and with parents. And we're taking the social emotional toll of this really seriously, doing the best we can, iterating all the time. It's a lot. There's no doubt about it. It's a lot.
Bjorn has a comment in the chat if you folks want to read it. Have I missed anybody who would like to comment or question? Yes, Ben.
I'm just curious about, number one, just thank you to all of you who are frontline with this, with all of our students and the parents and the community trying to sort this out. I've got several kids in my house and am a former educator and can empathize with a lot of what's going on and recognize that I'm in a really privileged place because of all those experiences to be able to sort through this. And I'm curious about, one, I'm sort of making an assumption that there's a lot of proactive work that's happening to reach out to students and families who aren't asking for help, but who teachers can identify that may need help, and sort of a different way of approaching social services and support systems within schools, I would think would have to be a lot more proactive and look different right now. And I guess I'm talking about this thinking more, even towards the future, towards next year, about how this might shift the role of what we do in schools through those areas. And related to that, I guess my pointed question is, are we collecting data right now that will help inform us as we try to make decisions about these things in the future, on everything from numbers of families who are seeking help, to what kinds of help are they seeking, to how frequently, and just sort of try to understand the new ways that we have to interact with learners and families who are also learning in this case and who are surrogate teachers in this case. The shifting way that we may have to run school for quite a while, and what ultimately what that will cost and need to be managed and supported and nurtured and all the rest of that. That was a lot of talk.
Ben,
I'm sorry if there was a specific thing in there.
I can start in on a response to that, and I may have a principal that wants to jump in, but I would say yes and yes to both of your questions. That we knew going in that we would have to really be very tuned into our families, and those families that that we may have already had trouble engaging with at the start, that we had to take extra care to do our very best to engage with them. So the beauty about our schools, they're small enough and our principals know every single family and they know who's who. And that's really been a large part of their job, is making sure that we have the systems in place to reach out to everybody. And they've put things in place, like if they know a kiddo connects with a certain unified art teacher, then let's make sure that teacher connects with that kid and that family. So really trying to harness all of our resources to make connections. And I know they're also they all have a very somewhat of a different, they may have a different system but they're all tracking communications and collecting that data on a weekly basis. So they know who's being connected with, what, what their needs are. So they are tracking all of that. I don't know if a principal wants to, I know Carolyn probably will speak to that a little bit when she talks, but I don't know if any principal wants to jump in on that.
Neil had a hand up a minute ago, Neil McIntyre.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
So Ben, we have a student support team at school that meets weekly to discuss students and families that are in need of support. So we're keeping regular eye on everybody. That's a mechanism that we have in place anyway. Obviously, our role has increased with this school closure. Teachers are communicating with families every week, and every classroom is keeping a log so we can keep track of who we're able to get in touch with and who we're not. For a lot of reasons, most of those reasons, 99% of those reasons, are just to see what kind of support we can offer. If there's a kid falling off the radar, we just want to reach out and say, how can we help keep you on the radar? And that usually requires some family support as well. We're challenged a little bit to offer support to families, to sort of merge this with Melanie's question. It's challenging. We have 2 counselors. So we have a guidance counselor and a mental health clinician at Floodbrook. So that's 2 people for 300 kids, plus all their parents. Teachers are really playing the part of therapist right now for parents, and I can't underscore that enough. That a lot of the role that teachers are playing is trying to help the parents and keep them emotionally regulated around teaching their children at school. So there's an added burden on teachers in that regard that we have to be considerate of. Moving forward, Ben, to go back into your question, I just think that we should, as part of our planning, consider that in the what I think is an inevitable case of future closures, I think that we're going to have to figure out how to support parents, and we're going to have to build some mechanisms in there, because without supporting the parents, then education at home for a lot of families is going to start falling apart. So whether we get into this interesting debate about whether or not it's our job to counsel the parents, and quite frankly, if our job is to educate the children, then we have to be able to support the parents equally.
Other folks? Yes, Melanie.
So to that added responsibility for your teachers, I guess at the superintendent level, is there additional supports for our teachers now as far as counseling goes? I hate to push this counseling thing, but with it being such a stressful time, is there budget, is there money, is there availability for our teachers to get counseling also? So they're not, because a lot of them have kids at home also, so they're doing all of this. So are there additional supports we can build in for the teachers as well?
Jackie, you're muted.
Yeah, I know the principals are tuned into their staff. We're trying to keep lines of communication open and support our staff, as they need it. And what our staff, they're hard on them. They're hard on themselves. They want to do everything perfectly, and they're in this whole new world. And I just keep saying to them, all we expect of you is to do your best. You're going to do what you can do, and we're all going to do what we can do. And that's how it is right now. So we haven't built in a budget to address, we haven't anything bubble up to say we have these particular needs at a staff level and we need to address it. We are starting to have some conversations. We know we're going to have some different PD needs as we look into the fall. So how might we deal with that? That may be different. So we'll start having conversations about that. And there's also the CARE money, and we don't have a lot of direction yet about how we can use that, but we may be able to access some of that if we have specific needs. So the best I can say to that is we're monitoring it. Principals are, having conversations with their staff, and our staff, I think, is pretty comfortable with telling us when they need something. So we're listening.
Are you seeing any additional problems now that more employers are having folks go back to work, and what might have been the one parent who was dealing with these issues now has to be away during the day?
Not yet, but that's brand new, so not yet.
Other comments or questions? Don't see any. Okay, so are we to the discussion of special ed then?
Sure. So I would just add to what Jackie said, Melanie, just to kind of get closure on your question. The folks that I've talked to who I felt were struggling, talk to them. And I've offered our EAP benefit to people, as well as guidance counselors, or, it all comes down often to who you feel comfortable with. But I know EAP has been beneficial for people. And I think it's something that's important for us to keep reminding people of. It's a really incredibly valuable resource that we have available to our staff, and it's probably underutilized a lot of the time. So that's one of my go-tos. So the teachers that are on here have already experienced, I feel like, I wish I knew they were going to be here. I could have prepped, because I kind of get a little bit emotional about seeing everybody. So I'm kind of feeling the same way again. So to all of you who are here, it has been great to see you and toggle through screens. And for those of you, I know there are some teachers, because I've heard from a couple of them, who are also watching this on YouTube Live. So hello to all of you. And this is not special ed related, but I know I'm going to forget because I'm going to start talking. I feel like, thank you for everything that you do. Our teachers are stretched very, very, very thin, and they are not giving up, and they are persevering, and they are struggling with a lot. And I am incredibly grateful for that. For those of you who are also parents, I had to get up and shut the door here because I have no idea what's going on out there. And all I kept thinking of is, please don't bring it into this room while I'm talking. I've got 5 minutes. I just need you to not walk in. It is incredibly difficult. And if you are trying to work in the standard that you set for each other, that the caliber and quality of instruction that you strive to achieve, combined with parenting and wanting to be the most amazing parent, teacher that there is as well, because that's what we do to ourselves, it's a lot. And I just want to acknowledge that for all of you who have moments where you feel like you are on your very last thread. And the last thing, this is nothing to do with special ed still, but for all of you moms, happy Mother's Day. You have earned a little bit of pampering this weekend. So please allow it to happen. I would say that, jumping into special education for a couple minutes, I'm not going to say a lot. I made a very intentional decision to filter through, it happened, right? To filter through the information, the deluge of information that was coming in early on, and to be very intentional with what I put out to folks in our department and the requests made around what to do and what not to do. I encourage people to come back to my guidance and filter out the rest. And our special ed staff have stepped up big time. They very quickly and effectively met the requirements that we've got. And they've connected. One of the most common phrases I've said up to this point is, we really need to be reasonable. We need to meet people where they are. We need to have a plan of what we think is appropriate. And then we need to talk to parents. What do you feel like you can handle? And it may iterate, it may change over time, but really trying to meet people and support them as much as possible. Our students with our most complex developmental needs are struggling. We basically engaged in a practice that it goes against everything we know is best for kids. Without warning, without preparation, we turn their worlds upside down. And for students with a lot of needs, we know that is going to have really negative consequences. And so I have seen our staff come together and rally with families and do everything we can to support them and help them feel heard and be there when they're panicking or crying or struggling. And our teachers have done an incredible job with that. We're doing the very best we can, and our teachers are meeting the needs of many of our students. I've had a couple of people say that of all of this, kind of the special ed side of it seems to be relatively smooth. as far as more overarching student services topics, there's been a lot around McKinney-Vento, which is the Federal Homeless Education Act. We had many families who met the criteria, and this obviously created a more complex situation. We've got students of ours who are in other towns. I'm going to leave it that broad. And we've been partnering with those supervisor unions around food, around services. And so really coming together as a region to support our children and families, which I think has offered a level of stability. We are offering, as much stability to programming as we can for kids and families. And I'm just incredibly impressed. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say, but our folks are doing a terrific job.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Randy? I don't see anybody in the chat. I don't see any hands. All right, could we go to Carolyn, who's a principal at Courier?
So I put together a really short video because I wanted to be able to share with you a couple of examples of student work. And I needed to do that ahead of time so that you guys were able to see the visual and the audio. And I believe that Celeste is going to be presenting that to you, and then I can answer questions after.
Great.
You ready for me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay.
There's no audio.
Really?
Nope. When you screen share, you have to select to share the audio from the computer.
Okay, hold on.
Welcome to what it's like to teach remotely.
Hold on. All right. So if I go here, oh, geez. Let's get all out of all my other stuff. All right, so I stopped shared. Okay, so share screen. Where's my movie? Let's go back here.
When you do share a screen, you need to do share computer audio.
Computer sound. Okay, I'm going to do both of the. Okay, got it. Yeah, where's the video though? All right, let's try that again. Give me a second.
Now we know what our teachers feel like. Except I'm assuming we're a little bit better behaved.
It's so weird because all right, so I'm going to do share screen and then I'm going to start the movie. Where is it? Hold on. When I go, it doesn't let me bring it back up again. Here, help me try this. Hold on.
I
Does that work?
want to share what continuity of learning plans currently looks like in our schools and what some of the challenges and successes have been. Some of the challenges we have faced are certainly
Now we don't
attendance.
see the
We have
video.
defined attendance as students that have been engaged socially and
Sorry.
academically. The learning curve now for families with online learning is certainly a challenge.
We need the screen share too.
As educators, we spent a great deal of time learning how to use online platforms, and now we're supporting families with this new learning. Supporting students with chronic trauma, living in less than ideal families have internet.
I'm happy to do it if you'd like me to.
Why don't we try that?
Their homes. Some students may go to a relative's house.
not working?
Most materials
No.
are the students of least concern. Some of the celebrations.
So let me make Carolyn, oops. What do I want to do?
I can just share my screen.
Yeah, let me make you a,
Co-host.
yep,
She might need to be a host.
yep. All right, Carolyn, you should be able to do that now.
Looks like in our schools and what some of the challenges and successes have been. Some of the challenges we have faced are certainly attendance. We have defined attendance as students. The learning curve now for families with online learning is certainly a challenge. As educators, we spent a great deal of time learning how to use online platforms, and now we're supporting families with this new learning. Supporting students with chronic trauma, living in less than ideal situations, and all of the challenges that come along with that. Accessibility has been a challenge. Internet, for example, even though we spent a great deal of time ensuring that all families have internet at their homes, some students may go to a relative's house during the day while parents work. Some loaned devices are not functioning as they should, and certainly lack of skill is an accessibility issue. Ability to assess students' understanding of new learning is a challenge. Often the students who provide the most materials are the students of least concern. Some of the celebrations we've had for Courier are with week 1, 70% of our students showed some level of engagement. I followed and implemented attendance procedures, and week 2, we ended with 80% of our students showing some level of engagement. I have underlined some as our expectations are quite low at this point, but we are building on them. All educators and many families have overcome technology challenges and have learned many new ways to demonstrate learning. Here are some samples of students demonstrating their new learning. To start with, we have a preschool student giving a weather report.
Stormy and windy, and we bring a rain jacket and umbrella.
Next, we have samples of 2 fifth grade students demonstrating their understanding of energy flow in an ecosystem. Their learning platform is Google Classroom. Next, we have a 2nd grade student handing in her journal entry. And finally, using the video option in Seesaw, here's a student reading to their teacher. Many students have had success with using the video features to demonstrate their learning and explain their thinking for their teachers.
The hall was such a big mess. Mom was not mad. She
That is all. Thank you for listening. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, I'll look around for hands. If you're not on my screen or if I'm not noticing, oh, you can always put in chat that you have a question. I don't see any hands. I don't see anybody in chat. Okay, Carolyn, thank you very much. Do we have Kelly Foster with us now?
Kelly is here.
So would Kelly like to speak about food service?
There's Kelly.
Hi. Hi, everyone. So I will continue to echo the common theme of things being very difficult right now. Have we seen the pictures yet? Or are we going to do that?
We haven't seen the pictures. We'd like to.
They probably make it look pretty easy.
Just tell me when you're ready.
So this will be about two minutes of pictures. Does that sound okay?
That's fine.
It's silent. It's a silent slideshow.
I'm pretty
right,
sure
so-
nobody's going anywhere.
All right, let me get that going. Hold on. Let's fingers
And
crossed.
I'll speak a little as they're going through.
We're putting
Yeah,
you
I
on the
know.
spot tonight, Celeste.
I
We love
guess
you, Celeste.
so. Just bear with me. Here we go, right here. There we go.
You think so? I don't see anything.
You don't see the pictures?
No.
No, we're seeing
All right, hold on. All right, hold on. Let's try that again. How about now?
No. And they're good pictures. Kelly, do you have them? Can you share them?
I just tried to share screen and it said that the host disabled attendee screen sharing. Host
Yes, we can make you a host. How about that?
Sure, if that's not too much trouble.
It's not.
Celeste, can you make Kelly a host?
Yep, she did.
Okay. So I did not practice this because, let's see, share. Here we go. Sorry, I have not tidied things up here, but oh,
There we are.
that is celery sticks. So I gotta move my picture out of the way here. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I will speak while these run. You know, I think that all of the staff right now, our regular kitchen staff and all of our fantastic para support, they're really positive about what we're doing, and we all feel that it's extremely important that we were able to mobilize school food during this time. It certainly was not my idea. It was mandated, and we had a very short time to figure this out. It's something that, you know, just like with online learning, just like with so many facets of life right now, that, you know, it's so not normal. And so we're getting used to it. And we've been kind of forced to get creative. The food supply has been pretty decent, but just as we started to hit our stride, we get these curveballs with our food distributor, and there's random shortages that just seem very unexpected. So then we have to recover and regroup. I think that the delivery piece of the to-go school meals is really critical. And I'm really, really happy that we landed on doorstep delivery. That's what Jackie really, wanted. And because we started off doing doorstep delivery, we've been able to maintain our our base. And we do have many people that pick up, and that's helpful to us that we do have a lot of pickups. But I have heard from other school districts, because we do calls. I do calls with the state and with child nutrition directors. And one of the things they noticed that was after April break and after online learning kind of took off, they were noticing a decrease in participation. And those were specifically for the delivery models where they were bringing food to bus stops, because they felt like the kids weren't coming out to the bus stops to get the food. So we're still getting the meals to the kids because we're bringing them right to their house. And I think that, the convenience of that is a really big deal. And it's, it helps keep people inside and follow the shelter in place order. And a couple other things I wanted to talk about was that how, the whole reason for doing this, for packing up school meals and getting them to the children was primarily to make sure we were taking care of our kids that are maybe food insecure and whose meals predominantly come from the school and whose nutrition comes from their school meals. And we are serving those kids. I wish I could say we were serving all of them. I don't know that we are. But another way that this is benefiting kids, and it's something that I never realized, and I don't know if maybe you all have realized this either, board members and people of the public and the community, is that I've heard reports from parents just say that it's their child was so excited to get something from school that the meal service, whether it was they were picking up or whether they were receiving it through delivery. I think I'm going to stop this now. There we go. That it helped create routine for the kids' day. And I know as a mother of two children, that's something I'm struggling with right now. And it's not any secret that kids like routine, and that's a really kind of important part, I'm sure, of this transition into online learning. So I wanted to kind of, I wanted to acknowledge that. And then the other piece that I feel like this is benefiting for our children is that, the teachers, the parents who are transitioning to working from home right now, it is very hard. It's hard when you have to leave the house, and it's hard when you have to stay home and work from home. There's really no easy way to work right now. So I think that these meals have also provided families who are working from home the ability to just save time and save stress preparing meals for their kids. And they may be perfectly capable of doing that. And they may have food. But I think this is really helping families with that. And it also, I mean, really, because we're bringing this food to so many kids, it saves families, just very practically speaking. It saves them many trips to the grocery store. I know that, I go to the grocery store like every 1.5 weeks, and I only have 2 kids, and they're not even that big, and there's just not enough room in the grocery cart. So I think that's another really good benefit of this huge endeavor of mobilizing school food. And yeah, I'm just really, really grateful for the staff that we've had. We've had pretty much the same core group of people almost from day one. Food service staff and paraeducators, drivers. And that's been extremely helpful. The consistency, having that consistency, we've no one's gotten sick, and they're all making really, really big sacrifices to be there regularly and to keep a schedule. Most all of them have children, and it doesn't matter if they're young or they're old. It's all a huge adjustment right now. So I'm very grateful for all of those people that have stepped in to help, because it's a massive undertaking. And I think one of the hardest things about it is just that we're just not used to packaging everything up. It changes what you buy, it changes what you make, it changes your food safety protocol, and everything that we make, we have to cool down, and we have to cool it down fast. We don't put out to-go school meals that are lukewarm. So that's another challenge, is depending on the kitchen, whether it can be rolled into a walk-in freezer and cooled down, whether it can be prepared a day in advance and chilled properly. So I think that is about it. Anyone have any questions? Melanie, hi.
I know Jackie is laughing at me. I just want to say, I'm sorry, but I'm like crying watching, and I really appreciate what you're doing. I know there was a hiccup that first week when school was happening. My daughter was asking what's going on, and I was able to say to her, hey, look, there's some things that need to get figured out. And the first thing that I saw our schools doing was making sure everybody got fed. And I can't tell you how proud I was of this district and the work that everybody was doing, that the first concerns went to making sure the kids were going to be safe and taken care of. And so a huge thank you to you and your crew. And I hope that, I think I probably speak on behalf of most of the board, or all the board, when I say that, and pass that along for us, please.
There are a couple of very nice comments in the chat. Dick, was your hand up? No. Anybody have any other comments or questions?
I do want to mention that, thank goodness for, one of the benefits of merger. Thank goodness for Kelly. Thank goodness for Derek. Thank goodness for Greg Harrington. If we did not have them, we would not be pulling off what we're pulling off. But their leadership has been incredible. And they have been able to, Kelly's been nonstop, and I just thank her for that, because we would not have been able to do this. If Sue and I talk about if we were back in the old days when we had all these individual schools going, and it would have been a nightmare. So this has been really wonderful.
Yeah, and that, that Monday morning when we all met, and it had really been hours, only hours since they had gotten the waiver for offsite school meals, which enabled us to do this and get reimbursements for it. Meeting with you and Sue and Randy and Greg and Derek and Skylar doing the survey, it like one of the easiest parts about the past month and a half now is just was getting it off the ground. That actually to me was one of the easier parts, because we all had everyone to carry a piece of that weight. And so, yeah, I'm grateful, because I think that we really got off on the right foot, and with momentum and lots of adrenaline. And then ultimately there was that adrenaline hangover, and that was not fun. But things have leveled out. I was just looking at the calendar, and yeah, we're over halfway there. So we got this.
All right, thank you again.
Thank
Any other comments or questions? Right. The next item is ends policy and community engagement, the next steps to take. I think I may be responsible for this being on the agenda, because I was becoming concerned that right now our ends policy is a very, very vague placeholder, and yet we're asking the staff and the administration to do things that are supposed to be guided by an ends policy. Dick.
I recognize that the process that we had proposed to engage in is sort of impossible until we can gather more than 5 people in the same room and preserve distance. But if we look at the minutes attached to the agenda, I think all of us at the last meeting actually engaged in watching the films and in going through the process of coming up. And I would like to propose that it's a stopgap measure, but we as a board came pretty close to establishing some core principles that could be formed into an ends policy. And in the absence of the ability to gather people together, maybe we should just bite the bullet, develop that policy based on what we did, recognizing it's going to change and it's going to evolve.
Melanie, I'm unmuting you. Oops, I think you keep trying to. There we go. No, don't. I'm doing it for you.
Oh, I didn't know you had that capability.
Yeah.
I would kind of, I am under the understanding that each of the schools individually had set up their own ends policy previous to our joining as the Taconic and Green. And I feel like it would be much more appropriate to, though it's scattered, they're all very similar. I would feel much more comfortable keeping those in place, knowing that those were built by a community. I'm not sure it behooves the board to take administrative action, so to speak, to create our own end policy right now without that community engagement. I think that was such a key part of it. And because they're so similar, and Jackie and Randy, you can probably speak to this better, why couldn't we just measure our actions based on what the schools have in place already, if there's specific things that are coming up in the short term?
Let me just say, I don't believe that UD 23 at least had an ends policy that was usable under policy governance.
I mean, Courier did have one. I mean, you have new principals in place too since that time. So I don't know. I mean, we talked a little bit about that. I think that the academic end of this, the core academics, leadership could definitely, no matter what happens, come up with, here's what the data says, here's where we think we should focus with our core academics for the upcoming year, and do a projection for a couple of years out. So they could do that no matter what. I think that the larger question is really those dispositions, we used to call them, and then we were calling them competencies when we went through that community engagement process. And I looked at those and the principals also went through the same process. So you have, I think, 2 or 3 that were in common with the principals. And I imagine that we'll see that surface across the board. So I don't know. I think that, Dick's thinking has some merit in that maybe you just at least frame out, here are some dispositions to attend to, but you, as soon as possible, go through some community engagement process. And I think you can do something like this for community engagement. I think that if we have some time, you can think about, how do we get some more feedback? Do we do a survey? Do we have family community members watch that video, and then we have some type of, you do some type of virtual community engagement? I think you still can. But I think, right now we put everything, we had to, because we had no capacity. We just had to put that aside at this point. But I think that the committee could maybe come back together and say, what might a plan be if we think we're going to be in this virtual place for the next 6 to 8 months?
Other folks have comments or questions? Jim Saltzgiver has a chat item. Did you stop my video for a reason? I don't know whether that relates to this. No?
Yeah. No, it's just my video got turned off by the host, and that was my question. Why it got turned off.
Deb is waving at you.
Yeah. Oh.
Go ahead, Deb.
I think that the merit of having an ends policy is that it's one that we all share together, even if it's not the final one. It's something that we all want to be working together on, and to have 5 or 6 different policies which are similar but not unifying. I like Jackie's suggestion that we sort of pull something together as a temporary ends policy.
If you'd like me to, for my final meeting with you in June, I can take a look over the next month and look at what you put forth for dispositions, what the principals did, present that to you, and we'll just craft out an end statement and take a look at it and see what you think. And is that a place, something you could work with right now, and then put it to, here's some, and I don't mind also saying, here's some suggestions for how you might, garner some input from your community as you move forward over the next 6 months around that. Just an idea.
And that would include what Dick mentioned from the minutes that we just approved, right?
Right.
Ben?
Yeah, I was also in that little temporary committee that on the community engagement side of things. So I also feel like it's important that we find at when the timing is right for us to find ways to engage the community about what our end goals are, and what we really want for all of our learners and also our communities. I think that's one thing that's really been exposed through this crisis, is the role that schools play in holding our communities together, and also the deep inequities that exist within our communities, and how we've struggled to try to fill some of those gaps, through providing food, through providing counseling services to families, through all these technology support. It's pretty comprehensive, and I think we've patched a lot of holes, and I think as as people have already identified, as parents have to start going back to work, and kids are still at home, some of these inequities are actually going to get exacerbated. And so to engage the community in talking about what is the role of schools in community, and and what do we want for our learners, and what do we want for our whole community as a bigger conversation in a sense, but it's also, these are services we're providing out of schools right now. And so if that's, we're going to continue to go forward with that is a conversation that impacts that larger sphere really directly. So it's definitely something that I've been thinking a lot about. And I imagine there are a lot of parents out there in the community that are having thoughts about that as well. And not just parents, but other community members in general.
Before I go back to Melanie, is there anybody else that wants to say something about this? Okay, Melanie, go ahead. You're already unmuted. Nope. I'm unmuting you, so don't try to unmute yourself. Except this is not working for some reason. All right, try unmuting yourself then.
Okay. I think Bren brings up a great point in that things have changed, right? Since the last time we put together ends policies. And maybe to meld these two ideas, maybe it would be a great idea for our board. Maybe the policy committee would be willing to tackle putting together an ends policy recommendation. I mean, we've all been in meetings where it's easier to change something that's been proposed than to come up with a fresh idea, right? So if we can start with an idea and then try to engage maybe through forums like these to craft it down, but recognize that maybe the ends policies that were in place and where we need to go weren't addressed at our last meeting because things have changed and new ideas have come up. So those competencies, what does that actually mean in real life now? But I do think it should be part of, I strongly feel like the community needs to be somewhat involved, whether it be that they craft it or we pre-craft something for them, and then we open up an avenue for them to give feedback and make sure that it's crafted, it's fine-tuned in tone with how our communities feel.
Back to Dick.
You're going to do that. Okay, I think that the committee that was established, which has really studied this whole thing in much greater detail and proposed both the films and the series of protocols that get fundamental values, should be the agent, not the policy committee, because that's really only two people at this particular point. I like very much Jackie's suggestion of cobbling together both the principal's perspective, also perhaps even from an administrative point of view, taking advantage of what we have now learned is a pretty critical role in our communities, and coming to us in June with that suggested ends policy. I like very much personally going to the community. I don't want to predispose them, but going to the community with something off of which they can react. That's all.
Other folks have comments or questions? Don't see anybody in the chat. Don't see anybody on my screen. So is it fair to say that there's a consensus that Jackie ought to work with the folks who were instrumental in picking the videos that we saw last time that led to the results that are in the minutes, and come back with a temporary, not a permanent, but a temporary ends policy that goes beyond the placeholder we have now? Folks have opinions on that? Ben's got his thumb up. So does Dave. Tell you what, if you think it's a really bad idea, why don't you make a horrible face or wave or tear your hair or something? I don't see that. Or you can say in the chat you're tearing your hair.
I see there's a space for reactions. Is that at all usable for voting or making at least an unofficial vote? Could we add reactions that have our name attached?
You can do thumbs up with it. Yeah.
Would that help you, Herb?
It would, yeah. So let's see here. Okay, I see Deb. I know Dick's in favor. It was his idea.
They're all fading, but yeah, I think they had them all up there.
Okay.
They were good.
I only see some of them, but all right. Okay, so are we clear on what's going to be presented in June then? As far as Dick and Jackie are concerned anyway?
And I urge you, the other night, I made my husband watch the Adaptable Mind with me, that video that we all had watched, because it's kind of eerie how relevant it is to right now. It's really eerie.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, it was that whole idea of the person trying to personalize in that Ebola crisis, and the dispositions that they surfaced that recommended around, creativity, multidisciplinary thinking, empathy. It was like, whoa, is this relevant for today? So I think that it will be an incredible conversation that your community has 6 months from now about what really matters.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank both Dick and Jackie and Ben for their comments about this, and Melanie too, because I've been really troubled with the idea that we were operating under policy governance, and yet one of the most important realms really didn't have any policy. And I think this is, if we had gone longer, I think we would have gotten into some pretty bad habits. Okay, if there's nothing else on this item, then there is an item here for the COVID-19 State Task Force update from Randy.
So I will just share with you where things stand on it. I think it was Friday, March 13th, that I received an invitation to be a part of this task force. And so it includes a wide range of people, both in the educational field as well as private sector, digital learning, kind of innovative educational folks, public schools, independent schools. Heather Boucher is heading up this task force, and it's intended to, at this point, go approximately 3 months, but it may continue. So there were 3 primary questions that the task force is supposed to respond to and advise the AOE on. The first question is regarding what resources do teachers need at this point to effectively engage in distance learning? The second related to professional development and training. What did we think folks needed for that? And the third question is regarding what does all of this mean for the future of education in Vermont? So we were asked to let Heather know what question we were most interested in answering and be a part of a subcommittee to address that question. So I selected the third question regarding the future of education, as did a lot of other people on the task force. It definitely was the area most folks were interested in. So we just got a survey today, and essentially we will start meeting next week and be meeting every other week as a subcommittee for some unclear time frame. So I don't know exactly what it means. I think it's a good opportunity to be a part of the on the ground conversations and to have a sense of what's being considered and where things are going. We all probably know Secretary French better than most. Given what we know about him, it's probably unlikely he's going to allow this to necessarily go without some shift in how we provide education. I'd be interesting to see how it goes. So I'll keep you updated as we move forward.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Randy? Melanie. For some reason, I can't unmute you, so you'll have to do it. There you go.
I have my own special mute button. No, I'm just kidding. I was just giving the thumbs up as in it sounds good.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Anybody else have a comment or a question? There's a question from Laura Grace Brown. Are there teachers on this task force as well?
So at the state task force, there's member, at least one, if not 2 people from the NEA on it. Yeah, we're also looking, I'm engaging in conversations locally to say, what about us? Which I guess I feel like it is, I guess, important to just sort of say that we are really starting to think about the work ahead of us and how do we figure out what school's going to look like next year. And that in case you're curious about whether we are doing anything or thinking about it or kind of sitting back, please know that it is very much on my mind. And everyone in the next couple of weeks will be hearing from me. All the teachers, I'm gonna teachers, administrators, be thinking about how do we come together and really think about what next year might look like with all the uncertainty of what's ahead of us. So locally, Laura, I would say that I am going to be partnering very closely with teachers on the work ahead of us.
Any other comments or questions? All right. This is now the second time when there's an open time for public comment. We set aside 10 minutes at the beginning and then 10 minutes now. And I confess I have forgotten how I can tell if somebody has a public comment.
Probably best to use the chat box if someone wants to be.
Yeah. Don't see anything in the chat box yet, but let's give it a minute. For most computers, the chat box is going to be down at the bottom. In the meantime, I'll call on Ben, though.
Sorry, yeah, this is just a quick question too. Just following up with Randy, just wondering if there are any students on that task force or if there's a group that's specifically reaching out to young learners about their experience.
Do you mean the state level task force?
Mm-hmm.
There are no students on it. We haven't had our first meeting. So, I think that part of, I know one of the thoughts I have is, do we need additional voices here? It's just exact same thing I saw Diana posted in locally, you know, who should we engage in conversations? And I think the more diverse perspectives we have, the better off we're going to be. I know that as I think about the work that we're doing locally, it's really important to me that we have somebody who is looking at the discussions and the thoughts we're putting forth from an equity perspective, someone who's kind of constantly reminding us about the diversity of folks we have in our communities, that another person might be always reminding us about the social emotional impact of what we're considering or putting on the table. Those are two, you know, kind of primary thoughts that I have at this point. But I want to be engaging in this work with people who are ready to roll up their sleeves, think creatively, have the hard conversations, and try to be as comprehensive as we can with whatever plan we develop coming forward. It's, you know, everyone sort of turns to everybody else right now saying, do you have the answer? What do you think is happening? We're all trying to anchor to something concrete. And none of us have any idea what's coming down the pike, which is frankly a very hard thing for educators. It's putting all of us out of our comfort zone, and we all keep looking to somebody else for the answer. And it's all here with us. It's all here with the collective us. And I'm excited and also nervous. And I think that that's probably an appropriate way to feel right now. So we'll see. But those are all the kinds of voices and perspectives I'm looking for.
I would imagine if you weren't nervous, there'd be something wrong with you. By the way, relating to Ben's item also, we were originally going to have an item on this agenda about perhaps introducing student representation on the board. We haven't forgotten about that. We just weren't ready for it this month. We may have it on next month's agenda. Let's see now. There's a comment here. Most people have had their video hidden by the host, so I can't see them. This is true. But I don't see anybody trying to make a public comment. Am I missing something here? I'm going to assume I wasn't then. Okay, let's take a minute to reflect on the norms. And I don't know whether everybody has them in front of them. We'll make sure all our students are our first priority. And I think it's pretty abundantly clear from everybody's reports that that's happening. We will honor the distinction between governance and administrative responsibilities. I think thanks to what Dick suggested, we are doing that rather than just getting into the nitty gritty ourselves of what to do in unusual circumstances. We will set ends policies, board management delegation policies, and governance policies and measure our performance against these policies. And again, what Dick and Jackie and Ben are talking about will help us do that, I think. And then the SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-bound. We'll conduct ourselves in a courteous and professional manner. Did we respect time? Did we follow protocol? Did we speak to the point? Were we prepared? Did we bring closure to open items? My opinion is we did. We'll make fact-based decisions that are in the best interests of our stakeholders, and we'll clearly and effectively communicate with all stakeholders. Anybody have any comments on things that we didn't accomplish that we should have? I don't see any. Our next meeting is June 2nd, 6:30 p.m. We don't know, obviously, whether that will be a Zoom meeting or what format it will take. And now,
Herb, based on the discussion we had before, I would move at this particular point an executive session, at the conclusion of which we evidently are going to announce at this time that we will come back as is required and immediately do no other business other than to move for an adjournment.
okay. And you need to state the reason for the executive session.
For the purposes of discussing negotiations.
Okay. Moved by Dick to go into an executive session to discuss negotiations. Is there a second? Second by Melanie. All right. Let's do the same thing that we did before. If you were either abstaining or voting against the motion, could you somehow let me know either by the chat or by making a horrible face or something or other? I don't see any, so I think we can say that passed unanimously.
How could you tell what was a horrible face, Herb? I mean, really.
It's like that Supreme Court justice that said he would recognize pornography when he saw it.
So who am I putting? Randy and Jackie plus all the board members?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Randy.
We're going to some room that's walled off.
Yes.
The magic room.
The cyber cell.
We don't know if this is really going to work, but we'll see.
Fingers crossed. So if anybody that's not a board member, you could just sign off right now because you won't be accepted into the room.
It'll work if you're using a
Or you can
breakout
sit
room.
there if you want to.
Whatever. I feel like I'm playing a game.
Presumably, we will rejoin you, but very briefly at the end.
Yeah, give me a second. I think I have everybody that's in the meeting right now. All right, so breakout room 1, I have all the board members, Jackie and Randy.
I don't know who's unmuted, but I can hear Keeper in his background right now. Somebody has a window open.
Looks like we all need it back.
I move for adjournment.
Okay, moved by Dick to adjourn. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second by George. Oh, and you're quicker on your fingers than I am.
Okay, we'll do the same thing we did before. If you object to adjourning, or if you're abstaining, do something so I can't possibly miss your message. Otherwise, we're going to assume it's unanimous. Looks unanimous to me. So,
Yeah, unanimous.
okay, good. It's 9:38 and we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all.